All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahushai, Bahasham Racha Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And this lesson, as you can see in the title, be careful of this. Now, this is something I was thinking about. I forgot what inspired it, but I believe I might have heard it somewhere, which said, whatever I was listening to, they were mentioning about success and failure. All right, and they mentioned, I think they said failure is a slow process. And when they mentioned that, immediately it sort of dawned in my head, that's actually a very important thing to keep in mind, because in this truth, in this knowledge, right, in the work that we are doing in serving the Lord, with whatever role or lot that you are, or you find yourself in, whether you're a teacher, helper, prophet, listener, believer, all in all, failure, right, in this case, which can be very detrimental to us, failure is a slow process, and more prevalent for teachers, right, because you have the heavier responsibility of being diligent, in the sense of you're not just teaching, but you also need to stay sharp, right, study, and continue to learn and continue to remain in that spirit of not just keeping yourself in the right spirit by watching videos and reading, but also then teaching and feeding the Lord's lambs. Now, because failure is a slow process, that's all the more reason why you have to be careful for it, because you could find yourself in a boiling frog method type of scenario or situation. Okay, and what is meant by this is that you start to fail, but you start failing so slowly. All right, so much so that you don't notice that you're failing. You don't notice that you are reclining, or you're doing worse, right? You're regressing in comparison to what you should be doing, or where you should be at, which is growing. Okay, and that's why it's a very dangerous thing. The same reason why the boiling frog method is very effective, which is because the frog being in the water starts off lukewarm and doesn't see that as a threat, or even cold, right, or cool, and doesn't see it as a threat. It's no problem, right? It's not like they're dying, but the water gets hotter ever so slowly, that with such tiny increments in change, they're getting used to it. They're adjusting to it, right? They're getting complacent. Oh yeah, it still feels kind of warm. Yeah, it still feels kind of warm. And then the water gets hotter and hotter and hotter until it still feels kind of warm until you're dead, right? So, similar situation here. You start off being very diligent, right? You're teaching, you're doing your lessons, you're going out to the highways and byways as we've been commanded to do, right? The Lord commanded us to do that. And as King Solomon said in the book of Ecclesiastes, the whole duty of man is to fear the Lord and follow his commandments. So you're doing what the Lord has commanded you to do, but eventually you start to, find comfortability in slacking, right? And being slack, and not maintaining that same fervency, right, that you had before. But you're doing it very little, like it's happening very slow. And these things can be internal changes, because things that are externalized start from within, right? And then they start to show forth through your actions and your words and your demeanor and so on, right? So when it comes to doing, doing lessons, right? Or going out to the highways and byways, where when you first came into the truth, you were so excited, you were so on fire, but then eventually you start to feel like, I gotta go back out. I gotta go back out. Eventually you start getting worn out over time. And then it starts to become a point where you start to try and justify not going out, for example, right? And then you do it once, twice, and then next thing you know, it starts to become more and more of a thing. And then you keep on looking for more justifications to excuse that lack of diligence. That is the danger of this slow failure, this failing so slow you don't realize it. And by the time you do realize it, it's too late to do something about it. So with this problem being said, being put out there, now what, right? What can you do about it? But the scriptures say, examine yourself, right? Examine yourself, whether you be in the faith, cool. What if you examine yourself and you find out that, all right, I do feel kind of lukewarm, right? I do feel not as fervent. Well, why is that? You know, when you first came into the truth, there was a plethora of new information hitting your brain. That honey, right? The honey phase of the truth. You're getting like that dopamine rush of new information that sounds good. It makes you feel good. You're excited. But then over time comes the patience, right? Wisdom trying you in many ways. You having to endure the reproach of others, not having that instant gratification, right? That cheap dopamine and all of that. You're not getting that. So eventually you start getting lax, but then and also you start to learn more things. And then the new things become fewer and fewer, right? Because now it's kind of like, okay, most of these breakdowns, you understand most, if not all of these prophecies. So now it's almost like just the same routine, the same thing over and over again. Well, the first thing is to pray. Okay, the first thing is to pray. And then, each and every one of us are different. Yeah, we all believe the same thing, but we're different. Certain brothers gravitate to certain parts of this ministry more than others, right? There's some who, you just find yourself loving more like the book of Proverbs and Ecclesiasticus, and the more practical in the sense of character building aspects of the scriptures. Well, you can go into that more and think about, okay, well, what can I learn? What can I do more of to better my understanding of this? And that way I can expound more on these precepts than just the base level that we always go into, because I spend more time in these parts of the scriptures so I can help edify and feed the lambs even more, right? You may read a wise saying that was written by King Solomon, right? And you may be able to expound on it a bit more because you've done more research on that specific thing that he said, right? You spent more time in that aspect of the scriptures. Not to say that you're neglecting everything else, but you spend a good amount of time there to where you're sort of becoming, that's like your niche. Figuring that out, as we call it, your lot, and finding something new and exciting about the scriptures to go into will light that fire. That's the spirit. The truck over there says, let's go. But it will light that fire, which is what you want, to keep you fervent, to keep you diligent, to say, oh yes, I'm not just doing the same old things every day and it's getting boring. And no, you're constantly keeping yourself, going in the spirit. Now, it's also not the worst thing in the world to try other parts. Oh, I'm more of the, I like to go more into prophecies and articles, and I love those kinds of things. Yeah, but a little history can't hurt. You know what I mean? Try going into a bit more of the history and reading more. And oh shoot, okay, this is interesting. So the point is, like, another example, okay, I'm more into the history, and so then go more into the prophecies and dig deep in there and rekindle that fascination that you had before of the scriptures when you first woke up. Because that intrinsic motivation, that eagerness, that excitement when you have that like taste of, oh wow, this is another layer of the scriptures that I didn't know about that just got peeled. It lights that fire in you. It keeps you going. It makes you excited to want to, go back. You wake up in the morning, you're thinking about, oh yeah, I learned something new yesterday. I was looking into I don't know, this herb right here, and now I know why in the scriptures it mentions this, that, and the third. More pieces start to connect, and then you start to enjoy the more the things that you've learned. Others can now know it. Okay, so it's measures you can take to break from the staleness of repetition, right? Like, repetition is good, right? Don't get me wrong, repetition is good, but you want to be mindful not to fall into a lifeless routine, right, where you're just doing the same thing, over and over again, but without like a renewed and fervent spirit or a joy for it, right? It's become mundane. That's the problem right there. Because when it becomes mundane and you just keep doing it, eventually you're going to start doing it less or not as good. And then that's when that slow failure starts to set in. And that's when you're in jeopardy of becoming like that boiling frog. You may, remember that when we deal with the scriptures, these are not abstract concepts. Like we're not, when the scriptures talk about nuclear destruction, let's say destruction, and we understand that to be nuclear destruction, right, pertaining to the prophecy of World War III. Well, you understand the breakdowns, right? You understand when it talks about an arrow, you understand what that means, right? You understand when it mentions the flame burneth before it and the fire behind it. You understand what that means. But do you understand how an actual missile works, right? Maybe you should look into that, because if you do that, it'll give you an even deeper understanding of why the prophets described the destruction the way they did. If you have a better understanding of how a nuclear missile works, or what is the difference between a hypersonic missile, a ballistic missile, an intercontinental ballistic missile, and all these different kinds of artillery in the modern day, that's good, because then when you nuclear war, because you understand, okay, just because a missile was shot doesn't mean it's a nuclear missile, or these little things go a long way. You talk about the mark of the beast. Well, we know it's an implantable C-hip. Okay, let me maybe look into a bit, read some articles on how does this actual technology work. Because then, number one, you can speak more accurately when you talk about it, right? And number two, you can understand how different developments in technology today are able to actually link to that. I forgot which, I was watching a video, I forgot which, the priest shaman, right, from the New York main camp. He said that, right? He mentioned this concerning, the CBDC and so on, which he mentioned, right? Like the device itself, the implant, that in itself is not contingent upon them bringing out a central bank digital currency. Okay, because the digital currency is some money, right? Some currency, but it's not in itself the actual chip, because the chip can function in other, as a matter of, right, on based on different kinds of, okay, and that wallet, if you go to, I don't know, Gambia, or you go to Australia, or you go to Brazil, and they have different currency, you can have the same physical wallet and just put different money in there. So even if there is no, they haven't brought out a CB, like, it doesn't mean that, okay, the implant can't work. That's just an example that I'm throwing out. But if you have a deeper understanding of the implant or the mark, then you can see why that makes sense. If you read more into these articles as to, what actually is a central bank digital currency? Like, I use the term, I hear about it, but what actually is it? And what are some of the POCs, standing for proof of concept, that they have for these things? How do they plan to use this technology? How are other countries who are already in a pilot program or a pilot version of this using it? Having an understanding of this can make Revelation 13 and 16 pop out a bit more, or Revelation 13 and 15, and he causeth all. It can make you understand a bit better. Poeo, he causeth all. I can see why and how they can go about using this modern day technology to do X, Y, and Z. Okay, so the point is, especially when it comes to these prophecies, the closer we get to the fulfillment of these prophecies, the clearer it becomes, right? The picture becomes clearer. Why? Because we are getting an actual what's the word they use for that? Hands-on, right? If it's not really hands-on, but you get what I'm saying, like first person view, like where this is not secondhand, this is primary, because we're living in this time. But we're getting like this hands-on primary view of the developments of the technology that will be used in these times, right? In because it's not that they're actually gonna put it, they're gonna cut, use scalpel to cut your actual forehead and then try to stitch it in there, but really it's gonna go into your brain. Well, how do you know that? Oh, let me look more into, you know, brain implants. Oh, okay, this is how it actually works. So it's not just every day. Okay, well, Revelation 13, it calls it for Mark, and people are gonna asking questions like, okay, saying is this implant, this chip, but how are they actually gonna use that? How is that gonna function? What role is it gonna play here right now? So you can give more life to the precepts, to the scriptures. I mean, I'm pretty much almost done. Just wanted to make that. I mean, I'm pretty much almost